Hello and welcome. We are Geeks Assembled, and we have assembled here today to talk about a British sitcom. Yes, a British comedy, which is set in a leisure centre. Yes, Whitby Newtown Leisure Centre with Gordon Brittas. And let's see what Susan has to say about Gordon Brittas. And this is the very first episode I've had.
Okay, I've only watched the one episode. Thank you, Alad. And whoever thought of this, it's an interesting show, but I was really uncomfortable. I mean, comedy is generally something that generates a whole lot of discomfort before it resolves itself. I mean, that's what the whole thing about, telling a joke and then you hit the punchline and people suddenly break out and it's funny. But this first episode was basically making me so uncomfortable. I mean, you could tell that his there was the punchline of now we don't want coffee cups on the counter. And we'd like you to say, "How may I help you?" And do it with a smile. I mean, and this woman's weeping. Oh my gosh, it was phenomenal. It was really uncomfortable to watch, though. I mean, I was like, you could see that it was building. Oh man, and the actor who played Brittas. Oh, wow. I mean, he had me like on the edge of my seat going, I want to hit him. I want to poke him in the nose. I want to pull his hair. You can't treat people like that. You can't treat people like that. But oh man, it was like, what a good actor to put me through quite that much agony. And so I really don't know about the rest of the show. I haven't watched anything past episode 1, so I can't tell you what the punchline is, but probably these others in this cast will be able to tell you the punchline and push you into that. But the other punchline that I really liked, the other, build up was when he went outside to play with the kids and he took the cricket bat and then he hit the ball and then he walked off with the cricket bat. I mean, he was just like a big kid. I mean, really, it was like, I've got my stuff. I got your stuff. I got my stuff. I got your stuff. Your stuff is my stuff. It was such like a big kid thing to do. I enjoyed it. It was really, really cool. If I must give it a rating today, I will give it an 8. It was really cool, really uncomfortable to watch, but really cool.
So, what we've learned from that is Susan wants to pull his hair and poke his nose. Thank you, Susan. Now, let's see what Jason has to say about this episode.
Pretty funny episode so far. Watching this, especially with Chris Berry as playing Gordon Brittas, who seems more as the male version of Mrs. Bouquet. This was pretty much all out there. I mean, with a bunch of random characters I do not really familiar with now at the moment, besides the woman that's crying, between what's going on with her and the guy who's got a messed up arm, and he's a strange odd character. But there's definitely a lot of funny moments in this one. With Gordon's character, he's some kind of delusional OCD type of person. Just wants to make things right, and it always goes wrong. I mean, itself just works out well. My favorite part is like always on that last part of that episode with the guy who's just climbing up, throwing the trying to remember what that is. If someone could help me. He was throwing something at him.
Table tennis bats. Table tennis.
Table tennis.
Yeah.
was throwing table tennis at him, which I thought was pretty funny, and he just looks at him up there. I mean, that was just pretty funny itself. Definitely pretty interesting series. I did watch a couple episodes of it, but isn't really much to say between it. I feel sorry for the wife. Has to put up with him. I mean, she reminds me more as like Witchford from Mrs. Bouquet, how she has to put up with him. The series itself, pretty funny. I will give it a 9 out of 10.
A 9 out of 10. Thank you, Jason. Now let's see what Alex has to say about this first ever episode of the Brittas Empire.
Yes, it reminded me of his character Rimmer from Red Dwarf. It also reminded me of Keeping Up Appearances with Hyacinth Bouquet, that they may be keeping too many ideals or too many compulsive, obsessive ideas about how the world should be as opposed to what it actually is, and then you can see they're not relating to people really. I mean, they're sort of, their mindset is the mindset, and that's it. So that is interesting to watch, that you see situations that actually remind you of that. Personally, I didn't understand why there wouldn't be a supervisor or somebody else to realize that. But obviously they're doing it for comic effect, and it's a comedy errors. It's the same thing with Faulty Towers as well, that, you know, he thinks his way is the way and he barely relates to anybody else. So it's kind of unpleasant when you have to deal with somebody like that at work or in your family. But as I said, it's played for comic effect, and some people are like that. It's just an extreme. You know, they don't want to listen or relate or empathize with anybody else. So you get characters like that. I will continue to watch the show because I actually like the writing. It does remind me of his character Rimmer, but it is the same actor and he plays it very well. And I'd probably have to give it an 8. And I'll deduct points because of Keeping Up Appearances. I actually thought she did that type of character better.
An 8. Thank you, Alex. Now let's go to Craig. Go ahead, Craig.
This series, I think it epitomizes everything that was middle-class Britain in the mid-90s or 80s. It felt like the 90s. I got senses of, like, his Rimmer character. Just what Alex said, really, with the Rimmer character. I liked his micromanagerial OCD-ness. And I got the impression that, was the health club really the Death Star? Was he could be Darth Vader. And the woman on the committee who wants to supply him a reference, she could actually be Yoda. But all in all, I like this series. I did watch it when it was on, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
I think I just need a few minutes to recover from that. Let's have a few minutes of silence while we all recover. Thank you, Craig. Anyway, let's go to Connor. Let's see what Connor has to say. Go ahead, Connor.
This was irritatingly bad, I thought. It wasn't that funny, in my opinion. The micromanagerial character of Gordon Brittas was, perhaps in my opinion, one of the most irritating personalities out there. The ones that are so OCD to the point that they start pushing people away, that people are walking out of jobs and stuff because of these sorts of people. And he's so irritatingly bad and so compulsive and obsessive that you start to psychoanalyze him. Like, what made him this way? And then it gets into this scientific sort of complicated thing about his character, and it draws away from all this comedic things that are being played out. The rest of the characters, none really stand out. To me, they're all like wet flannels. They're just they're there to be pushed around by this obsessive, dominating personality, which I imagine for Chris Barry took an awful lot of energy to act out, because I'm pretty sure that it's hard to act out that sort of personality, being how precise and obsessive and compulsive and irritating it can be. I'm sure it got on his nerves quite a few times as well, I imagine, especially if he's not like that at all, which I'm sure he isn't. None of it was really that funny. I thought the bit with the table tennis bats was mildly funny, but it showed how much of sort of an idiot that character was, because he's overreacting to being put next to a pool for that particular season, and to nearly want to, whatever he was trying to do, decapitate Brittas or kill someone, or with the table tennis table as well. It showed how much of an irritant and idiot his character was. And that sets up well in the future for character development. But for first impressions, it's probably one of the most irritating comedies I think I've ever seen. And it just wasn't funny. As I said, Brittas being a compulsive, sort of obsessive guy is the worst sort of personality, and I'm sure it's an irritant to work within a real-life workplace. So to watch it on TV as well is equally uncomfortable. So I think overall I'll give this a 4 out of 10.
A 4. Thank you, Connor. I'm glad you really enjoyed it. Now let's go over to Lee. Let's see what Lee has to say.
Right. Where to start? The Brittas Empire. It celebrated its 25th anniversary this year. It was one of the BBC's most successful comedy of the 1990s. And as for the whole series and this episode, the key word is surrealism. The whole series is very surreal, and as the series goes on, it gets surreal, more and more surreal. You just don't, as Connor was going on, don't take it too seriously, because if you actually see right to the end of season 7, you'll understand why. But Chris Barry, yeah, okay, very, very similar to Rimmer, very similar to Hyacinth Bouquet, and as it's been mentioned, Basil Fawlty. All good comedies, all mixed into one to create Gordon Brittas, which I think is a brilliant character, because everybody knows someone who is obsessive, who does things by the book, never listens to what anybody else says, and is always right. And it's life. There is people out there like that, but they're just making fun of Gordon Brittas. If you look, he's the one who always gets it in the end. It's none of the others. It's him who's always the butt of everybody's joke. But my favourite characters in this was Colin with the boil and the puss on his hand, and he's all about health and living healthy. And it does get worse as the series goes on. Carol, poor Carol, the receptionist, her husband's left her. She's got a 3-week-old baby. As the series goes on, you'll soon find out that she keeps the baby in a drawer behind the desk. And she's always crying. And Mr. Gordon Brittas' wife, she takes to drink as the series goes on to just live with Gordon Brittas. It's funny, it's well written. The scene where she gets the sandwiches out of the freezer to the party from 1985, just proving that she puts them back in the freezer because nobody ever turns up to these parties. But and the surrealism's there when he drops a table tennis, on him and throwing the bats. It does get madder and madder as the series goes along. And this title for this episode is Laying the Foundations. And this episode was laying the foundations for the series as the series goes on. And it didn't do a bad job. But as people have said, you love it or you hate it. This series is Marmite. You either love it or hate it. I don't mind it. It did have a slow start to begin with, but it was successful enough to get another series and another. It lasted 7 series and 2 Christmas specials. So it can't be that bad, can it? So for me, for the first episode, I'm giving it an 8.5.
An 8.5. Thank you, Lee. And what you've got to remember is that this is the very first episode. And there's a lot of comedies that don't start off very well. Blackadder being one of the prime examples of that was nearly axed. Blackadder was quite bad at the beginning, but ended up becoming good because they gave it more of a chance. And this series actually did get axed. It had a few series and then it got axed. And then it was, by popular demand, it was actually brought back. It was actually brought back. You know, this was a very successful comedy. It really was. And for a first episode, I think this is a pretty good first episode. Like Lee says, you know, you got Carol, Colin, they're my two favourites. And they do get more and more bizarre as they go on, because you've got Colin who does, you know, he gets more bizarre. You've got Carol who keeps the kids behind the desk in a drawer and things like that. It does get very surreal. Like the when the table tennis table falls on them, you know, it goes to fall on them. I thought that was funny. I enjoyed this. You got the suffering wife, haven't you? You know, like Lee said, with the sandwiches, and you got the baseball bat moment. And he has to be, Gordon Brittas himself has to be right, and he has to play by the rules, and it's all about health and safety and things like that. And it has to be by the book. Do you know what I mean? And it's like the smoking thing with the builder, and then it's like with a cup, you know, or you don't want the coffee stains on the side, you know, have the coffee outside and things like that. And I thought it was a really good first episode. I've seen all the series and all the episodes of this, so it does get better as it goes on. But I actually think for a first episode, this actually isn't bad for a first episode. I haven't seen the first episode in a long time, and I have to say Chris Barry is just perfect to play Mr. Brittas. It was made for him, wasn't it? The part was made for him. It's like they saw Chris Barry and they thought, what comedy can we build around this person? What comedy? We know his style of comedy. How can we make him have his own show? That's because he fits in so perfectly. And then you've got his laugh. His laugh is iconic, really. His laugh. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with an 8, because I know there are funnier episodes further on, and it does get more surreal. Yeah, it really does. So I'm going to open the floor to whoever wants to speak.
Yeah, as you guys were talking, I just remembered, what was it, 2 other characters. What was his name? The guy from The Office, the British version, and I'm trying to remember the other person right now. But wasn't he like that too, that he didn't listen, he didn't register, he didn't, you know, he didn't seem to have any real empathy. He didn't seem to, you know, realize that just because you think something doesn't mean you should say it. You know, and you have to have diplomacy. You have to know. I'm trying to think of another character, but I remembered The Office, and that actually was quite a good British show as well. I did like his comeuppance at the end, and it did seem like he was totally oblivious as well. I mean, he was really oblivious. Go ahead.
This is cringeworthy at times to watch, but it is written to be like that, and Chris Barry plays to that. And for me, that is good writing and good acting for it to be so cringeworthy. And then you just watch, you think, oh no, please don't do that, and he does it. But as you say, he always gets it in the end. He's the one who always falls flat on his face. But it's the supporting characters. I mean, I don't agree with Connor about saying all the other characters were wet flannels. They're not. Say Carol, Colin, even the two secret gay characters. I can't remember the names now, but they're always hiding their homosexuality. One's Gavin, yeah. They're always hiding their homosexuality from Brittas. Because back in the day, then it was sort of frowned upon. I think I don't know why, but it is quite funny the way they sort of hide their sexuality from their boss. But it is cringeworthy to watch, and I like this sort of comedy. It's very, very good.
But it is
go ahead.
Alex, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Ellen. I remembered the second character, but he was a minor character. There was another show they used to show on BBC America called The Fast Show, or that Brilliant. They changed it to Brilliant when it came over here. And they had about 4 characters that were very, very, very obsessive. You had one who was the father, and it got to the point where, you know, they tried to change the character and the characters around him because he was extremely domineering. I think that's the other word we're missing too, is that they're extremely domineering characters. I know they want their ideal of middle class, you know, or upper middle class ethics. But what they don't realize is they're driving everybody away and being annoying and making them angry. So they're actually working against themselves. You know, it's almost like a fatalism in a way. The more they try, the more they're working against themselves and alienating everyone around them. So those were the 2 other characters, the guy from the British office, the UK office, and 4 characters from the Fast Show that Paul Whitehouse had in the 90s. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but Mr. Brittas, he's meant to be annoying. He's meant to be cringeworthy. That, like Lee said, that is how the show is written. And yeah, the characters do have depth, and the characters have. You learn about the characters as you go on, like the wife who has problems with the alcohol, and you know, you have Carol with ending up with the kids behind the reception, and it does, like I said, it does get better as the series goes on, but that is with 99.9% of comedies. Just because you might have not liked this first episode doesn't mean you won't like the next episode or the next episode after that. It just
really great comedy, Alan, starts with a slow build up and then
exactly, yeah,
a zinger, and it sometimes takes a whole series for the big zing.
But you can't take it too seriously, because it does get more and more bizarre, because more and more things go wrong. That's the whole point. It's meant to go from one disaster to another. He creates these disasters. You know, he's the fault. He doesn't see that he's the fault in all this. You know, it's like at the end where he's in the office, and you know, you've had the one guy who's got the sexually transmitted disease. He's had a breakdown, and then you've had the worker strike, and he's upset the cleaner, and he says, well, what would have happened if this was yesterday when I wasn't here? You know. You know. So I'm gonna, does anybody else want to say anything? No one else?
No, I mean, you know, I understand it's a comedy, but the thing is, it's so well written and it's so defined that's why you notice it, because there are people like that. Then there's people that are too easygoing, or they want to make everybody happy. So you can have character flaws and character traits, and if you know somebody, or if you're imaginative enough, you probably could change the name or change the description and write about people like that. I mean, they say that about really great writers, is that they take parts of real life and incorporate it into the story, so that when you read it,
you write about what you know.
Yeah, you instantly relate. You know what I mean? So I understand it's a comedy, because if you think about it, we don't have time. Carol Burnett, Flip Wilson Show. There's lots of comedies that they take little personality traits, little quirks, and they put that into a character. And then you see that and you laugh because you recognize that.
I have to say, I actually think this would work very well today, because fitness and things like that, and leisure centres and gyms are even more popular today, aren't they? You know, who doesn't go to a gym, or who doesn't go to a leisure centre? You know somebody who does. I mean, I don't personally, but we all probably know somebody who does. You know, yeah, exactly, Lee, yeah. You know, the weightlifting and the running machines. You know, I think this would work well today. I think the BBC should bring this back. And there's actually talks of bringing the Brittas Empire back. And I hope they do, because I think it would work today.
No, I was actually laughing, Aled, when he went in to try to address all the women that were trying to do the exercises, and he didn't realize that he was offending them and making them upset. And so because I went to 3 different gyms, I actually heard, people, whispering or talking in certain corners, you know what I mean? But the really smart gyms realize that, you have so many members and you have to try as much as you can to make them happy. Not everybody, because they did throw some people out at all of these gyms. If they went too far, or if they insisted that their way, is the way, and they were holding up the other, members and customers and stuff. So even I was laughing, going, yeah, I recognize that, So they probably need to come up with an American version, but they're probably scared because everything wants to be politically correct and you can't offend anybody. And the thing is, it's the purpose to which it's used. You're going to offend somebody sometime. It's just a question of, are you able to relate and say, oh, I'm sorry, I went too far, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't have used that word, or are you just going to say, well, I'm mad, or I want this, so I'm going to, just railroad you,
Surreal comedy, though, takes those things and makes it, and builds the story on those things, so that it does break down, it does disintegrate, and that is the commentary. That is the commentary for the politically correct. It that becomes that commentary. So it's funny.
Does anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah. My final says, I'm so glad you let me be on this Star Wars cast. I've really enjoyed it, Aled.
Yeah, I think it's been great. Yeah. So thanks, Craig, for that. Yeah, I've enjoyed the Star Wars cast. It's hopefully the new one's as good as the last one, because I didn't like the last one. But anyway, we'll wrap it up now.
Surreal.
Yeah.
Surreal.
Yeah,
surreal is the one.
Yeah, surreal. Yeah. Anyway, I'd like to thank everybody here for joining me. I'd like to thank you for watching. Tell us what you think about the very first episode of the Brittas Empire. And if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. And if you haven't subscribed to us, go and subscribe to us. Also, give us a like and give us a share. And as always, look after yourself, take care, and we'll see you next time.